Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning is part 2 of Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, and this is the 8th instalment of the action, adventurous and spy franchise. Once again, it was written by Bruce Geller, Eric Jendrison and Christopher McQuarrie. Yet again, McQuarrie, or McHugh, directed this film, being the creative leader since the 5th film Rogue Nation. Tom Cruise stars and returns to light the fuse as Ethan Hunt for one last time. Well, so they say. The film follows Ethan Hunt and the IMF team as they continue their search for the terrifying AI known as the Entity, which has infiltrated global intelligence networks. With the world's government and a mysterious ghost from Ethan's past on their trail, joined by new allies and armed with the means to shut the Entity down for good, Hunt is in a race against time to prevent the world as we know it from changing forever. So, The Final Reckoning has finally arrived, one of my most anticipated films of 2025, originally 2024. When it comes to this film's script, specifically the first act, I found it to be not great, but okay. By showing some flashbacks of Dead Reckoning and other MI films, I was anticipating that these were just going to be for nostalgia reasons, but they felt relevant, sometimes helpful, but at the same time obvious. For viewers who haven't seen any of the MI films, including Dead Reckoning, but also to viewers who haven't seen these films in a while. But there will be some viewers, including the hardcore MI fans, who will recognise and remember these flashbacks, and they may even find it to be annoying, and it may even test with their patience with the film. The other flashback sequences of other MI films are sometimes about previous and deceased characters and past events. These are relevant for a few characters' arcs. For example, the character Briggs, played by Shea Wiggum, it was full of believability as his arc was set up in the previous film Dead Reckoning of having conflict against Hunt. Making these types of flashbacks personal and relevant towards a character like Briggs and The Final Reckoning itself. In addition, within the flashbacks, there are some exposition dumps, and again this may test some audience's patience. I felt they were a bit convoluted and sometimes not needed, but at the same time, it wasn't at the level of a mess, and it was enough to process. However, I can see why that some viewers will have issues with these creative choices, and it will be a divided reaction. But when the film got towards the second and the third act, I found it to be so much better and loved what was happening. For the most part, I had a blast with The Final Reckoning. I enjoyed this just as the same as Dead Reckoning, and just like with that previous film, this has a ridiculous but exciting and awesome story. One of the main reasons why it's an exciting and awesome story is without question the phenomenal action sequences. From the underwater submarine sequence, which was so claustrophobic and suspenseful, the audience that I was with gasped a lot. Also, the biplane chase sequence is probably one of the greatest climaxes in cinema and action history. You can tell that Tom Cruise is trying so hard to not pass out because of the strong air rush blowing into his face. I got goosebumps, I was on the edge of my seat, and my jaw dropped. When I left the preview screening, I couldn't stop thinking about it, and later on in the evening when I was trying to get to sleep, I couldn't sleep, as it was all in my mind still. Seriously, how on earth is Tom Cruise still alive? With the amount of planning, practice and execution the 62-year-old man puts into these stunts and massive action sequences, again in The Final Reckoning, he wants to show and give some authentic action, big screen experience for the audience's time and money. Writer and director Christopher McQuarrie deserves just as the amount of respect and credit as Tom Cruise gets. The huge scale and lengths McHugh directs in The Final Reckoning, especially for the big screen moments, are full of confidence and triumph. I think without McHugh behind the camera, we wouldn't get the same amount of entertainment and experience with these type of blockbusters and recent MI films. Once again, both McHugh and Tom Cruise work together incredibly well. I cannot wait to see what they're both going to do next, especially if it's not related to Mission Impossible. The cast is huge. I feel if I say everyone's name, I will be here till Christmas arrives. Everyone is great in this film, and I would say that Tom Cruise, Hayley Atwell, Vin Rames, Shea Wiggum, Nick Offerman, Angela Bassett, and Severance's Tremel Tillman were the standouts in this film. There was again some likeable chemistry between the IMF team. I particularly liked Ethan and Luther's chemistry. This goes into a more emotional direction, and this especially works by how long we've known these two characters of working and being together since the original film. I very much liked the camera work. The uses of the familiar Dutch and low angle shots once again brought feelings of intensity and uneasiness. The nearly 3-hour duration honestly went by quickly. When I occasionally checked my watch, an hour went by and then another. Let's now talk about this film's main antagonist, the Entity. So, The Final Reckoning does go into a bit more deeper into the sci-fi genre than the previous film did, and I do think some viewers will be divided. It may be divided because it might be a bit too weird, and it's a genre that the MI franchise isn't recognisable with and not a big part of. But I felt though that it knew its limitations and didn't lose track of what the Mission Impossible universe is when it comes to tone and genre. The use of the Entity felt more appropriate and relevant for today's times, especially now that we have used and invested in AI more with its interesting and, again, questionable capabilities. The Entity itself was once again creepy, unstoppable and unpredictable. On a storytelling level, I don't think I've ever felt this much tension when you put AI and nuclear weapons together. Now on to some issues. Once again, the other antagonist, Gabriel, was once again emotionless, wooden and very much one-dimensional, just like I said in my Dead Reckoning review. I do wish they did something a bit more interesting with this character, especially being one of the main villains for this two-part maybe not finale. My other issue is that I wanted one of the supporting characters to have been given to achieve their goal, as it had believability and potential in the previous film. Like many others, I do not know what's going to happen next in this franchise. For a long time now, we've been living in times where there are many spin-offs, prequels, sequels and remakes, and I wouldn't be surprised if Paramount and Skydance continue this franchise, even if it's without McHugh and Tom Cruise. If that does happen, we could see a prequel about Luther or a spin-off about Benji. I do like those characters very much, but I'm good. But if that doesn't happen and that's it, The Final Reckoning is the end for Mission Impossible, which I would be surprised by, I would like to thank Paula Wagner, Brian De Palma, John Woo, J.J. Abrams, Brad Bird, Christopher McQuarrie, and of course Tom Cruise, for all making my favourite action franchise come to life. It's been one hell of a ride. So the script may not be for everyone, but MI The Final Reckoning is still worth checking out on the biggest cinema screen with the loudest sound, especially for the action and stunt sequences. It's worth your time and money. My rating of Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning is a recommendation. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and please let me know your thoughts about the film in the comments below. Feel free to watch another video. Also, check out my Letterboxd account where I've made a MI franchise ranking list. The link is in the description below. Have a wonderful day, and until next time.